astrophysics, X-ray and gamma ray, and has led the development of the Integral Science Data Center and the Heavens Project, and he's a member of the eAstrogram and CTA institutional boards. And today we'll give a talk about the legacy power in high-energy astrophysics. So I'll give you a 2-minute warning before the end of the talk.
Thank you. So I'm going to discuss about legacy, requirement, and all challenges that we have already met by many people. And I want to speak about opening the process of generating science, not only the data, but science and processing. And I will conclude with on-the-fly data mining, examples and new challenges for the upcoming experiments. So first I would like to start with a tribute to Nick White and all the ExoSat crew, because a lot of what we are doing started there in '86. I started my PhD in '88 and I was given a FUT, an ExoSat FUT to analyze, which I never managed to do properly. And then I went to ESTEC, where Paolo Giomi was there, and he just had finished the processing of the low energy instrument on board ExoSat, and I came there to steal his results that he had put a lot of work to generate, so he was not that happy at the time. I don't think it did any wrong things to his career afterward. So on the plot below, you can see again a bit the same plot and you have seen already. That's the number of time a paper is used for XMM, and you see that most observations are using 2 times or up to 30, 40 times. So you see that indeed archival research is extremely important for the outcome of the mission. There are several requirements on data management in astronomy. The first two we have already spoken about. The first one is that, of course, data needs to be accessible and traceable, and that's, I would insist that it is for data at all levels, not only the high-level products. Next point is that most users do not wish to understand all the detail of your experiment or of your computers and your archive and so on. So that means that use of this data should be simple enough such that people without the specific knowledge could use them. I think we have already spoken about these 2 parts. Now I would like to add two new arguments, 2 new requirements that came from started from the Integral history, of course, because Integral is making a lot of small pointing with a duration of about half an hour, and it has a large field of view, and this is the same that the SwiftBat has, for instance. So that means that if you're interested by studying a source, a specific source, you need to download half of the archive finally, because the field of view is very large and you have to process all of that to get your light curve or the spectra of your source or the data selection you want. So this is extremely difficult, and we have learned that doing it, that's not what user wants to do. User wants to do something else. They just want to click and get what they want. So I think it's important to be able to generate products that the users are really needing. The last point, which is related to the previous one, is that users are not interested by your observations, archive users at least, but by sources. They want to have data of a source or a collection of source, but not of your observation. So you need to provide them with an interface that allows you to browse the archive and the data according to sky position, so sources, time interval, and energy interval, and so on. So the classical view of all that is what you see on the right of the screen. That's what started in ExoSat and then was moved to HISARC. That basically you have an archive providing data, and a bunch of software that you can download and process it to do your science. And I think most people are still doing science this way. I know a very small number of people that are really using high-level products provided by an archive to write papers. This is really the exception. Most people are starting again from the data, analyzing themselves, because they want to understand what are the limitations of the data and changing parameters of the analysis, what they can get, and so on and so on. So this was in the years 86, 88 that it started. Then the VO came, and the VO built, this is very reduced view probably, but built some analysis services like the one that were presented by Pepe Fabiano just before, that are able to browse and access the product made available in this archive directly. Again, yes, the product is not the analysis software. So what you get with this interface is what the high-level product that were generated by this in this archives, which is again usually not what people want to have. So what we have tried to build to satisfy these difficulties we had with Integral, with all these many pointings with a very high wide field of view instrument, we have built an additional interface to the virtual observatory, which use in fact VO protocols but slightly extended because we need some more functionality than what the VO was providing, which is providing analysis services. That means that the user can, through an interface, explain what he wants, and then the software is going to derive it for him, and he can then change the energy band, change whatever he wants, and he gets different products because the products are generated on the fly for him. And if you can do that, then you see below these triangles you have the data and the information and the type of interface, W3 browse interface type that we have since 1985. Which represent just the access of the data and then the software, and then you do your work. I would like to mention that even ESA-SKY is at that level. ESA-SKY is just accessing high-level products that are available in the archive, but you get what is in the archive, not anything else. Of course, ESA-SKY interface is much nicer than W3 browse, there is no doubt about that. So what we have tried with in the service that we are providing, that started with Integral, is an interface that allows you to access the analysis. And we started to do that in 2005. And I believe that in the future, we should target to have interfaces and software that allow you to go up to the interpretation. That means that you want to fit complex models that you have to all the data. So you want to analyze the data and fit it to complex models. I will come back to that. Of course, the data volume that you have to provide is decreasing when you go from the bottom to the top, but the computing needs are increasing a lot when you go from the bottom to the top. On the right, I would just mention that for me, this access to data and information, this is really what I call analytic. Really, you do the analysis yourself. That's still what we are doing for Integral. And what you want to provide to the scientist is a synthetic view. That means that you can put the model in the software and see what happens when it is compared to the data. And I think if you push that further, then you go to something that I would call common sense, even if that's not the right word. That's the common sense that comes out of our mission. And that's what the public wants to see. Public wants to interact with your data looking at the knowledge. They don't want to look at your FITS file. They don't want to look at your F-tools. They really want to look at the results of all of that. So I think one needs to push this interface even a bit higher than what I have on this view graph to try to satisfy also schools, public, and so on. There are several challenges that were not mentioned before that I would like just to mention briefly. The first one is how to keep specialists committed after the mission. People are putting a lot of their brain building instruments, analyzing data, optimizing algorithms, and so on. And at the end of the mission, often they disappear because they have no visibility. The data, whatever was produced, goes to ESA, for instance. It's made available there, and that's it. And people disappear, don't get funding for their work, have no recognition, and so on. And I think that if we could try to keep these people providing value-added services on the data, like providing services that perform the best possible analyzing of the data, and if such services could be interfaced to a tool like ESA Sky, then you can keep people, scientists in the community who build this software and maintain it for a longer time, and you will get better results at the end. Now, of course, it's hard to fund such services. I think Julian told us that this morning. And I think there are several reasons for that. First point is that when you build a service like what we built for Integral, for instance, we built everything. Basically, we built the interface, we built the analysis, the services in between, and so on and so on. And I think this should not be our task as data providers or results providers. So I think it would be important to split the data provision, what you should be asked to do as instrument builders or person in charge of the analysis of an instrument, from the infrastructure. And I think what I just described before, this a service that allow you to provide results that could be an interface to ESA Sky and some infrastructure that are then maintained by the big agencies, this would enormously reduce the cost of what you have to do as responsible for the analysis and provision of data for an instrument, because you just build a service that deals with the analysis of the data and not at all with the rest of the problem. Again, you need to leave, so you have much less to do, so it's easier to fund. You have to leave data provision to specialists as long as possible. That was just what I was mentioning. And then, of course, you have to avoid duplication and keep it simple. So you need simple interface to these agency-provided interfaces. And we also need to try to avoid duplication. We have a lot of duplication. There are archive browsers at ESA. There is one at ESO. They are doing basically the same. I think the one at ESA is doing a better job from my taste at least. There is one at ASI. We have one in Geneva. We don't need that. I think if we could focus the money in function that everybody could use, that would save a lot of money to invest where the real problems are. And of course, the video is part of the solution, but there is an organization, an effort in the organization of the community that is required on top of the video to make it work. So this is I am just showing one view graph, but that's the product we have. We have interface. You type Macarion 421 and you get the page which is behind. That is really the result of Macarion 421. You find a few integral instruments, and you also find some data from BAT, for example. And I'm going to discuss that rather than integral because it opens new questions. But you find here on the right just some examples that are showing what you could get out of BAT. So the top is the light curve of Sinus 61 with BAT over 10 years. And so the data are extremely rich because you have continuous light curve, because the instrument is observing a fair fraction of the sky all the time, and it's slowing all the time between different positions. So you have a continuous light curve. And the second point is, of course, just the spin period of an object on a very different time scale. And basically, you just make your request, and all these products are generated in about, depending on the instrument, but let's say 20 seconds. So you just click and you get it. You don't need to wait. And that, of course, you need the infrastructure behind to do that. So let me just give an example about SwiftBat. SwiftBat is an instrument that is very similar to Integral, very wide field of view, even wider for BAT. And the data are not really offered to the community. NASA has an archive of Swissbad data. There are only basically 3 groups that knows how to analyze this data currently, and I am one of them, and one is in Italy and one is in Goddard. But the survey data of BAT are basically very difficult to process by the usual the community at large. And where I am seeing that, Swissbad, but it can apply to other observatories I will show. So you have to look at data mining, how you do data mining. So you have the data to start with, and then you need to process your data in a forms that allow you to do extremely fast analysis. And that's what we are doing. Swissbad produces an image that covers a fair fraction of the sky every hour, something like that. So the number of images is huge after 10 years of operation. And you have to transform that in a way that allow you then to bin and to access to this data extremely quickly. And with the tool that we have built, basically we have an all sky pixel database where you put all the measurement of BAT over these 10 years in all the energy bands. And basically just by adding numbers at the end, you can get your result extremely fast, and you can create sky images, source like your spectra. But you could also search for patterns and try to match models with your data. Okay, I have to fasten a little bit. So this is just two, I just want to show 2 examples very fast. So one is the black data that you see here. I'll just show the blue points, for example, are the data, the bad data showing eclipses around Vela X1. Vela X1 is a neutron star orbiting around a very massive stars, and the black line is just the model that comes from the simulation that are above, that are fitted to them. And this, nobody can do that because nobody has proper access to the data. And even if you would have a proper archive of this data, you would not be able to do that because you would need basically to download half of the archive to do that and spend probably 6 months of CPU time and a fair amount of a fair cluster to do it. So it's very difficult. So we need to provide more because these results cannot be obtained by normal users. Another example is stacking data. Here I just show an image that corresponds to 1 gigasecond of stacked exposure time with SwiftBat on a specific type of active galactic nuclei. I think that's the deepest image I know of in astronomy. And doing that, one could show that some very specific type of C4 galaxy have an enormous reflection, and they are not the very obscured one. But this amount of reflection is able, in fact, to explain the origin of the cosmic X-ray background without heavily absorbed sources, without a lot of heavily absorbed sources, let's say. So I think there are a lot of things in this data that nobody can use. So let me just finish very quickly on new challenges. So new challenges come, of course, of the large experiments that are coming, like CT and SK. You see that astronomy is going to produce data which is at the same level as the LHC phase 2. By 2025, which is very soon, and this really brings us to a different level of analysis than what we have seen up to now, and we have to think about that when we are building software and so on. And again, you can, in the CTA example, you can apply this data mining, and you need to do a lot of things with the data that you cannot do up to now. For instance, you have to go from the pixels that are detected by this Cherenkov camera to the particle showers parameters, and for that you can use machine learning techniques. It's perfect for that. You can learn this machine learning from the simulation that are already available, but this requires a lot of computing power. Next, you need to reconstruct the showers in space, and with CTA we will have many telescopes, much more than what we had ever. So using stereoscopic reconstruction, you can reconstruct the pool of light in the atmosphere that are left by these particle showers to try to determine again the event parameters. And this again, if you want to do it right, needs significantly more CPU than what we have seen up to now. At the end, this is a simulation of what CTA will bring on the galactic plane, and you see we'll have a lot of confusion because all these sources of high energy gamma rays are very extended, and the only way to understand one of these sources will be to fit a model of the galactic plane to many different sources. So again, you need a maximum likelihood technique that you can apply to a huge amount of data to get the best science out of this data. So all of that, I think, can be done. I am just showing an example here. We have now on the market extremely large computing centers that can be used for that. Here I am just showing the one we have in Switzerland. That is, in fact, the #1 machine in Europe. It has 65,000 cores and 5,000 GPUs. CTA would need only a few % of the power of that machine to do all of that. So you could imagine building analysis services on such a machine that would then deliver to the user what he is asking for, using all that power that is available for the scientific community. Okay, so that's my last, I'm sorry, that's my last view graph. So I would like just to repeat again what I see as the evolution of of what we are doing, where we need to go from an interface to the data to an interfaces to analysis and interpretation. And I think this requires a lot of an integration first of the work that is usually seen as archive, pipeline, and interpretation. It's a dynamic system. All these data mining techniques are iterative techniques. You have to modify them when your science evolves, because you need to extract from your data new type of information. So that has to be driven by science and education, of course. And I think it also requires a closer collaboration between all the stakeholders, between the agencies and the data provider. And I think there is a lot that we can gain on that, because there is quite a bit of duplication.
Okay, thank you very much. It's time for a quick question. Is there a question for Ronald? Paolo?
Are those photos freely available now? Can I click and get them and include them into my SCD tool?
What?
The BAT analysis over the years.
Yes.
Okay, we need to talk.
Okay, stimulating work then. Okay, thank you very much.